Okay, let's unpack this. Our deep dive today begins with really a snapshot of complete and total professional disaster.
Right.
You have to picture this. A newly minted, freshly graduated law student, his name is Rudy Baylor, who is not just broke. I mean, he is facing total personal and financial ruin.
Yeah, it's not just I don't have a job yet.
No.
It's a free fall. He's actually filed for bankruptcy.
You filed for bankruptcy, and this promised $80,000 a year job that he had lined up, it just vanished, literally overnight. He's sinking and sinking fast.
And yet this is the precise moment, I mean, the lowest possible point, when the universe just hands him this golden ticket.
The golden ticket is a good way to put it.
It's a monumental case. I mean, it is the life or death fight for a dying young man against a behemoth insurance company that's worth, what, $500 million?
The stakes just could not possibly be higher, not just for the client, but for Rudy himself. His own survival is tied to this.
Yes.
And that's really the core tension we're going to be exploring today. We are diving into a high-stakes legal journey that chronicles not just a single, monumental civil trial, the kind you see in movies.
Right, the big dramatic courtroom scenes.
Exactly. But this is about the gritty, often shocking reality behind it, the ethical compromises, the ruthless corporate tactics that are employed by these big defense firms, and ultimately the test of character for a rookie lawyer who's just completely caught in the chaos.
And our sources, they track Rudy Baylor's ascent so clearly. He moves from absolute desperation, filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, to securing one of the largest punitive verdicts in state history.
It's an incredible underdog story.
It is, but what's so fascinating here and what makes the story so unique is that his professional success immediately, and I mean immediately, precipitates his personal downfall.
It was like a Greek tragedy.
It really is. The narrative shows us that winning this fight means he has to plunge into this chaotic, almost criminalized underbelly of the legal world, a world that forces him to literally run from the police and eventually the FBI just to survive.
So this deep dive is, well, it's tailor-made for you if you want to pull back the curtain on how high-stakes litigation really functions, beyond all the courtroom drama. We're exploring how these immense fortunes can be won and lost, and what happens when that callous, just organized machinery of corporate greed collides head-on with genuine, profound human desperation.
We're going to unpack every single layer of this unbelievable trajectory, the desperation, the triumph, and then the crash that followed almost instantly.
Okay, so to understand the drastic choices Rudy makes later on, we have to start by grounding ourselves in his situation at the very beginning.
You have to, because this wasn't a young man making poor choices from a position of comfort or privilege.
Not at all. He was hit by a corporate wrecking ball before his career even had a chance to begin. His plan was sound, A job at a good firm, Broadnax and Spear, right out of law school. An $80,000 salary. Security.
And that salary, we have to emphasize, that was a huge salary for a new lawyer in the Memphis market at that time. It really represented the culmination of years and years of effort.
All that work in law school was supposed to pay off right there.
Exactly. But that professional security, it was just erased by one single cynical corporate maneuver. Broadnax and Spear was completely absorbed. Swallowed whole.
Fell out whole, yeah.
By the much larger, exponentially more powerful firm, Tinley, Britt, Crawford, Mize, and St. John.
And who engineered this hostile takeover? A powerhouse known as Trent and Brent. These are the kinds of firms whose names just tell you immediately that they handle high-dollar defense work.
Oh, absolutely. They represent that systemic corporate power structure that Rudy is, unknowingly about to go up against.
The critique of Rudy and his fellow associates from the new firm was it was so cold. It was almost cruel in its corporate simplicity.
They were deemed insignificant. That's the word they use. Insignificant.
Incredible.
Trent and Brent, they didn't want the young talent. They didn't care about the future of the firm. They wanted the senior partner's high-paying clients. That was the asset.
So the associates, including Rudy, were literally dismissed because they were in the way.
Just collateral damage in a merger. He lost that $80,000 annual salary. And in a city like Memphis, which already had this massive oversupply of legal talent, the sources describe it as too many damned lawyers, that job loss was utterly, completely catastrophic.
And that professional loss, it doesn't just stay in the office. It immediately spirals into total financial ruin.
It had to.
The sources give us really specific details, and they demonstrate just how completely wiped out he was. He wasn't just broke, he filed a straight Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
And for those who might not know the legal distinction, filing Chapter 7, that means total liquidation. You are telling the courts, I have no means to repay my debts. I need a complete fresh start.
It erases all your eligible debt, but it just wrecks your credit for years and years.
It is the legal definition of hitting rock bottom. And what's so fascinating is how he actually got there. It wasn't just, prudent spending that led to the Chapter 7.
No, not at all.
We see this portrait of just frantic, desperate overspending, and it's driven by the promise of that $80,000 salary.
Right. He was spending money he didn't have yet, but thought he was about to.
Exactly. And that was coupled with these credit card limits that just inexplicably increased, which led him to believe, the good times had already started.
The details of the spending, they're both extravagant and just. Heartbreakingly short-sighted. He spent $1,100 on antique silver earrings for his then-girlfriend, Sarah.
$1,100 on earrings while he's basically unemployed.
And he dropped $300 on a single celebratory Christmas feast, a feast planned around Dom Perignon, foie gras, and caviar.
The kind of thing you do when you think you've made it.
Right. But the irony is, he couldn't even bring himself to eat it, and it later it rotted in his refrigerator. It's this perfect image of aspiration and delusion just crashing head on.
Exactly. He was living the life he thought he was about to have, and now he is, for all intents and purposes, financially dead. And the debts that actually forced him into the Chapter 7, they weren't even the huge ones he ran up trying to impress Sarah.
No, they were the little things, the basic nagging costs of just existing.
Right. He had this petty $400 dispute with Texaco over a gas bill.
And he was 2 months overdue on his rent. So he's mourning the loss of these expensive earrings and the rotting caviar while simultaneously trying to figure out how to pay for gas and shelter.
It's an incredible contrast.
So how does a bankrupt lawyer survive in the interim? Well, his immediate income sources were grim.
Very grim.
He took a job as a bartender and a waiter at a place called Yogi's. It was a cash-only operation. And the owner, Prince Thomas, a man we'll soon learn is deeply connected to organized crime, was paying him in cash.
With Rudy himself suspected of skimming off the top just to make ends meet.
Right. And on top of that, he was just heavily reliant on the financial and emotional support of his friend Booker.
But despite these really dire circumstances, he was still technically involved in his legal education, which brings us to the Cypress Gardens Clinic.
The clinic, yes.
And this is where the lofty ideals of law school just collide headfirst with the messy, messy reality of poverty law. It's a perfect setup for the tragedy he's about to face.
The scene itself is pure black comedy. It was organized by this Professor Smoot, who basically used the time to ramble on about esoteric, often boring subjects like living wills and the legal rights of abused geezers.
Meanwhile, the elderly clients in attendance, they were often just dozing off. Or, in the case of this one memorable character named Bosco.
Oh, Bosco.
He was covetously staring at the Jell-O being served. That was his main concern.
The Jell-O. So Rudy knew he had to appear legitimate, despite all this inner turmoil. The sources mention he had to quickly fix his face into an intelligent frown, trying to project some kind of competence.
And Miss Birdie, the clinic organizer, she didn't really help much with the professional image. She introduced the law students with this enthusiastic yet slightly insulting pitch. They're good and they're free.
Good and free, the two words you want to hear about your lawyer.
Exactly.
And the clients they attracted, they really reflected the harsh reality of free legal aid. Bosco, still focused on his Jell-O grudge, he went to this other student, Anne Elizabeth Erickson,
whom Rudy privately identified as a real bitch in pinstripes.
Right. And his friend Booker, he gets saddled with this really complicated, time-consuming divorce case.
And then Rudy. Rudy met his clients, Dot and Buddy Black. And that meeting, well, it changed absolutely everything. When Dot and Buddy Black walked in, all of Rudy's financial worries, they just instantly shrunk in comparison to the sheer weight of their tragedy.
Yeah, this was no longer about a $400 Texaco dispute. This was about life and death, and it was entirely dependent on corporate caprice.
That's a great way to put it, corporate caprice.
Let's focus on the individuals for a second, because the power of the Black case really lies in that contrast between their quiet desperation and the company's vastness.
Right. You have Dot Black Marverine. She's 58 years old, described as thin, wiry, and a chain smoker. She's on Social Security disability because she has a bad heart.
And crucially, she is the one with the focus. She's the fighter. The sources say she describes the entire situation with amazing clarity.
She does. And then you have Buddy Black Willis, who is just this portrait of silent, suffering ruin. He wears thick glasses, has these red, plump cheeks, and is often seen in a dirty shirt.
And we learn he has a physical injury, too, a plate in his head from some past accident.
A plate in his head. And he spends most of his time just hiding. He retreats to his wrecked Fairlane in the backyard, drinking gin and smoking, physically avoiding the house and the reality that is unfolding inside it.
And that reality is their son, Donnie Ray Black. He was diagnosed with acute leukemia 8 months prior and was given roughly a year to live.
The necessary treatment, this life-saving bone marrow transplant, was expensive. It was going to run about $150,000.
$150,000. An impossible sum for them.
Completely impossible. But here's the truly gut-wrenching detail. The detail that really fuels Rudy's later righteous anger.
What's that?
Donnie Ray had a perfect built-in donor. His twin brother, Ron, was an identical match.
Wow.
They had the biological solution right there in their own family, ready to go,
right.
But they were blocked by this financial barrier.
Which brings us to the villain of the story.
Yeah.
Great benefit life.
The insurance company.
Dot and Buddy had been incredibly responsible. They purchased this medical policy 5 years earlier. They never missed a single premium payment, and they had never even used the insurance until Donnie Ray got sick.
They did everything right. They paid their dues, and now they expected the protection that they had purchased.
A Great Benefits business model, as Rudy would soon discover, was not based on paying claims.
No, it was based on generating profits by strategically denying them. Rudy later coined this brilliant term, creative denial, to describe their tactics.
Creative denial. I like that.
They didn't just send one rejection letter, they sent multiple letters, each one contradicting the last one, hoping to just overwhelm and confuse the Black family into giving up.
So let's walk through the excuses. First, they denied the claim just on principle.
Which is, what does that even mean? It's essentially admitting we can deny this because we feel like it, and we dare you to challenge us.
It's pure arrogance. Then they pivoted, claiming that leukemia itself wasn't covered under the terms of the specific policy.
And when that didn't stick, they tried the classic insurance maneuver, pre-existing condition.
Right, I'll stand by.
And that's where the denial becomes just blatantly, provably fraudulent. Donnie Ray was diagnosed 4 years after the policy was issued. There was no way, legally or factually, to argue it was pre-existing.
So what did they do then?
Finally, in this last gasp of just bureaucratic nonsense, they claimed Donnie Ray was an adult and therefore not covered under his parents' policy. It was a dizzying, confusing, and deliberately cruel process designed purely to exhaust the claimant.
And this pattern of contradictory, exhausting denial leads us to the single most inflammatory document Rudy obtains, the stupid letter.
The stupid letter. This document, signed by a senior claims examiner named Russell Crockett, was the smoking gun because it showed not just denial, but active organizational contempt.
So what did it say?
The language is just. It's astounding for an official corporate document. It reads, and I'm quoting here, "On 7 prior occasions, this company has denied your claim in writing. We now deny it for the 8th and final time. You must be stupid, stupid, stupid."
No, they actually wrote that.
They wrote that. Stupid, stupid, stupid. This isn't just legal jargon. This is a personal insult embedded in an official claims notice. It reveals the true attitude of the company toward their low-income, vulnerable policyholders.
And Dot Black, with her amazing clarity, she saw right through all the bureaucracy to the heart of the matter.
She did. She summed up the injustice perfectly. She said, "They think we're just simple, ignorant trash with no money to fight them."
And that phrase, it just became the emotional fuel for Rudy. He realized he wasn't just chasing a paycheck anymore. He was fighting against systemic contempt and, really, corporate murder.
This is a crucial pivot in the story. Rudy starts out desperate for an $80,000 salary, but the Black case completely transforms his mission. The $150,000 bone marrow transplant cost is small change to great benefit.
Chump change.
But $50 million in punitive damages. The punishment for their actions. That's the only language they understand. So Rudy has the moral imperative, but now he needs the power and the ruthless education to actually deliver on it. #3, the unconventional legal education.
So Rudy has this emotionally powerful case, probably the best case in the entire state, but he has zero capital, he has zero firm infrastructure, and he's got a bankruptcy hanging over his head.
A terrible combination.
Law school taught him procedure and ethics, but to battle a firm like Trent and Brent, he needed to know the actual mechanics of winning high-stakes litigation, which, as we're about to see, are often deeply, deeply unethical.
His first move is actually a smart one. He checks the case's viability with Professor Max Luberg.
Right, the anti-establishment sage.
Exactly. A professor whose door is famous for being covered in flyers promoting progressive causes and boycotts. Luberg takes one look at the paperwork and he immediately recognizes the insurance provider.
He knew them.
Oh, he knew them? Luberg had no illusions. He instantly recognized Great Benefit as the lowest tier of the industry, describing them as selling cheap insurance to rural whites and blacks, and famously calling them the scratch-and-sniff armpit of the industry.
That's a memorable quote. So he confirmed it was a good case.
He confirmed Rudy had a good case, which in legal terms means, yes, they were undeniably guilty of fraud and bad faith, but...
But. There's always a but.
Luberg gave Rudy the necessary reality check about the jurisdiction. He said Tennessee juries are extremely conservative, largely due to successful corporate campaigns promoting tort reform.
And for the listener, tort reform is a broad term, but in this context, it refers to efforts, usually backed by corporations and insurance industries, to limit the amount of money plaintiffs can win.
Right. Especially for things like pain and suffering or punitive damages. So Max warned him that Tennessee was the land of the five-figure verdicts.
Meaning a $50 million payout was almost unimaginable.
Completely unimaginable. His final, very unacademic advice: sue the bastards.
So Rudy, needing money immediately, he tries to monetize the case. He seeks work at the prestigious, high-powered litigation firm of Jonathan Lake.
This is where he attempts to leverage that case file into a professional opportunity. He actually lands a temporary paralegal job.
But the pay is terrible.
It's only $21,000 a year, and he's working with this rising star associate named Barry X. Lancaster. The terms were just brutal. He agreed to work 60 to 70 hours a week for 12 months with zero vacation.
He took the job out of pure necessity.
He had to. And Lancaster's motive was cynical and crystal clear. Use Rudy to organize and research the black file and then steal the case.
Right. File the suit under the Lake firm's powerful name, but completely exclude Rudy from any of the fees or the credit.
Rudy was just a pawn in his sophisticated game of case acquisition.
And before that theft could even be executed, Rudy gets caught in this moment of just sheer cinematic chaos.
The Lake firm building burned last night, completely destroyed by arson, and the security guard was killed, turning property damage into a homicide investigation.
And this is that dramatic turning point where Rudy's life crosses, I think, irrevocably into the criminal realm.
Without a doubt. And Lancaster, facing police questions and looking to eliminate a professional loose end, immediately fingered Rudy as a suspect.
Of course he did.
He claimed Rudy was pretty upset after being fired, a convenient lie. Rudy was subsequently questioned by the police and the arson squad. Suddenly, the broke young lawyer isn't just worried about his rent, he's worried about being charged with murder.
This extreme legal jeopardy, it forces his hand. He needs immediate legal protection and a job, and that necessity leads him straight into the arms of the ultimate moral compromise. Bruiser Stone.
Bruiser Stone.
Rudy connects with Bruiser through Prince Thomas, the owner of Yogi's, Rudy's bartending job.
The guy tied to organized crime.
Exactly. The guy tied to organized crime and local topless business. Bruiser Stone is not just sleazy. He is a powerhouse operating completely outside the bounds of conventional law.
And Bruiser's operation is this stark contrast to the glass towers of a firm like Lake. He works out of a strip mall near the airport and a topless club called Club Amber.
But he is immensely profitable. He's making $300,000 to $500,000 a year, largely from high-fee drug cases, and crucially, from investments in the cash-rich topless industry.
An industry known to attract organized crime.
So Bruiser's employment offer was purely pragmatic. He said he would use his substantial contacts, which included leveraging favors through a Judge Schenkel's brother, to take care of the looming arson and homicide investigation.
But there's a catch.
Of course. Rudy wouldn't be salaried. He was told he would be expected to pay for themselves to generate their own fees. He was now operating on the street, not in a classroom.
And his very first instruction under Bruiser's umbrella was critical. He had to file suit immediately.
Why the urgency?
To beat Barry Lancaster. Because despite the fire, Lancaster still had enough initial research to claim he technically owns the case.
So Rudy's move, though it was motivated by self-preservation and professional rivalry, it actually secured the black family's access to justice under his name.
It did. And this is where Rudy receives his actual street-level legal education. And it comes from Deck Shiflett, Bruiser's associate.
Deck is the perfect anti-mentor. The sources describe him as a leech who possessed the skills to make $40,000 a year practicing law without a license because he was still stuck waiting to pass the bar exam.
He couldn't pass the test, but he knew the game inside and out. And Deck's training was the true revelation of the dark side of legal practice. He gave Rudy practical instruction on case generation.
How so?
He demonstrated how they solicit clients by visiting injured people immediately in the hospital. This is the textbook and often a legal practice of ambulance chasing.
And we see a specific example. They target a guy named Dan Van Landel, a car wreck victim. How do they even know about him so fast?
They get accident reports directly from police contacts who are on their payroll. It's a systemic corruption built right into the local infrastructure.
It's unbelievable.
In Deck's philosophical lesson, it just utterly rejected all the ideals Rudy learned in school. Deck dismissed the lofty notions of the practice of law as a profession, like between gentlemen, as entirely useless.
So what did he teach him?
He taught Rudy the brutal, essential truth of their world. It's competition, the marketplace. You do whatever it takes, however unsavory, to survive and to land that one big case.
It's the ultimate contrast. Rudy went from aspiring to intellectual rigor to being trained to exploit people's suffering for contingency fees.
And later, when Rudy actually partnered with Deck, they tried to maintain some semblance of a normal practice, but the grind was still brutal.
How brutal?
Well, the overhead for their tiny operation averaged about $1,700 a month. After splitting the meager income, they were only netting about $1,500 a month each before taxes. So even with this high-stakes black case bubbling in the background, they were constantly desperate for small fees.
And to stay afloat, Rudy took court appointments to represent indigent clients.
Right. Charged with everything from drug possession and petty larceny to public profanity. This was ethical, necessary work, but the pay was just insulting.
How much was he making?
He was paid a maximum of $100 per case. Since each case required about 4 hours of work, that breaks down to only $25 an hour before factoring in their overhead.
$25 an hour.
This is the true image of Rudy's tightrope walk. A lawyer chasing a verdict that could change the system while simultaneously earning less than minimum wage fighting drug charges for the homeless. It just shows the incredible, almost absurd instability he faced heading into the biggest corporate trial of the decade. Hashtag #TagManTagB, the trial, and the $50 million verdict.
Okay, so with the suit filed, Rudy, this inexperienced bankrupt lawyer, is now standing in the ring against the heavyweights, Trent and Brent, led by Leo F. Drummond. This is David versus Goliath, and David doesn't even have a salary job.
Not even close. The defense team assembled by Trent and Brent was a fortress. Leo F. Drummond was the ringleader. 60 years old, a Yale Law graduate with 36 years of experience. And he was flanked by these sharp young associates from Harvard and Columbia. This entire team was designed just to intimidate and exhaust Rudy.
They even employed a highly strategic, very subtle tactic to influence the court. Drummond brought on M. Alec Plunk Jr., a young black lawyer who was also educated at Harvard.
And this was a clear attempt to establish a silent connection with the new presiding judge, Tyrone Kipler.
Because he was also black and Harvard educated.
Exactly. They were trying to manufacture this environment of a shared elite understanding that would completely exclude Rudy.
The initial judicial landscape, though, was actually very dangerous for Rudy. The case was first assigned to Judge Harvey Hale,
a notoriously conservative judge, known for supporting tort reform and favoring defense verdicts under $10,000.
A nightmare for this kind of case.
An absolute nightmare. And Hale's first instruction was simply to push for a quick settlement, effectively shutting the case down before discovery could even begin to expose the corruption.
But then came a crucial change in fortune.
Judge Tyrone Kipler took over the bench. And Kipler was under 40. Incredibly bright, and critically, he was determined to assert judicial control over the trial process, especially discovery.
So he set a different tone.
Immediately. He was not afraid to punish the defense for any obstruction. He famously ordered depositions to be held down south as a way to send a message to the high-powered city lawyers that they would not be allowed to control the pace of the trial.
So Rudy finally had a neutral, if not slightly sympathetic, referee.
He did. But even with Judge Kipler in charge, the defense just doubled down on their ruthlessness. Trent and Brent employed pretrial tactics that just defied ethical standards, all aimed at suppressing key evidence.
Like what?
Well, the first major tactic was witness elimination, which is incredibly cynical. Great Benefit literally fired key employees, Jackie Lemansisk, Tony Crick, and Russell Crockett.
The author of the stupid letter.
The author of the stupid letter. They fired them just days before their scheduled depositions.
And then they tried to cover it up, claiming these individuals had resigned or been downsized.
Right. It was a transparent attempt to prevent Rudy from being able to compel their testimony through the discovery process, ensuring the truth stayed buried under corporate bureaucracy.
And then there was the classic document deception.
Of course. Drummond insisted to the court that all claim files were produced, but the essential, most damning piece of evidence, the stupid letter, was intentionally withheld by the client from his own defense team and therefore from Rudy.
They were banking on Rudy never discovering it existed outside the family's own copy.
They were. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wiretap.
The wiretap.
Deck and Rudy, relying on their street smarts and contacts, discovered that their firm phones were bugged. Almost certainly by Trent and Brent.
This wasn't just illegal surveillance. It provided Rudy a critical counteroffensive tool.
A huge one. They used this knowledge strategically. Instead of immediately exposing the bug, they fed Drummond false, tailored information about prospective jurors.
What kind of information?
They talked loudly on the tapped line about these highly motivated, anti-corporate individuals who are, ready to punish great benefit.
So the defense wasted resources and time vetting these imaginary jurors.
Based on intelligence they thought was secure and secret. This act of deception showed that Rudy had fully internalized Deck's competition, the marketplace philosophy.
He learned his lessons well.
He did. And these pretrial battles, they set the stage for the dramatic courtroom revelations. The first moment of emotional truth came through Donnie Ray's evidentiary deposition.
Because Donnie Ray was too ill to appear in court.
Way too ill. So Rudy had to take his testimony on video in his humid, cluttered house. And the cost of just the transcript, nearly $400, was a massive expense for Rudy's tiny firm.
But the decision to focus the camera only on Donnie Ray's face, which was described as thin as skin and bones, was a brilliant and devastating legal tactic.
It was. That video, showing the dying boy who had a perfect twin donor, would be played for the jury. It transformed the abstract legal question of bad faith insurance into the agonizing, concrete image of a slow corporate murder. It weaponized the emotional reality of the case.
And the procedural bomb finally dropped during Dot Black's deposition.
Yes. Rudy, holding the original stupid letter, showed it directly to Leo Drummond.
What was his reaction?
The shock was immediate and complete. Drummond's mouth opened, and the sources note these 3 large forehead wrinkles appearing, a physical manifestation of professional horror. He realized his client had actively hidden a document that would guarantee a punitive damage verdict.
He'd been played by his own client. The massive, sophisticated legal team had been compromised by the claims department's arrogance.
It shifted the power dynamic instantly, and the defense continued to unravel when Rudy called the terminated witnesses to the stand, starting with Jackie Lamansisk.
And she testified that she was forced to write a false resignation letter.
And accept a $10,000 cash payment to keep quiet about the Black claim.
But she didn't stop there, did she?
Not at all. She piled on, revealing her own internal sexual harassment and discrimination complaints, and explicitly admitted she had sex with the vice president of claims, Everett Lufkin.
This exposure just destroyed Lufkin's professional and personal credibility right before he was scheduled to testify about the integrity of the claims process.
It was a disaster for them. When Lufkin finally took the stand, Rudy forced him to admit the company engaged in post-claim underwriting.
And that's a key legal concept the jury needed to understand.
Crucial. Instead of underwriting the risk before issuing the policy, assessing the applicant's health, Lufkin admitted they underwrote after a claim was filed, meaning they only started searching for loopholes and excuses to deny coverage once a policyholder needed it most.
It's basically evidence of systemic fraud.
It is. But the knockout blow was the financial ambush. Rudy cleverly used discovery to force the CEO, Wilfred Keeley, to estimate the company's net worth.
A staggering $450 million.
With readily available cash reserves of around $100 million.
And Rudy then delivered the devastating comparison. He presented data suggesting Great Benefit cleared a massive $40 million annually simply by denying half of the approximately 10,000 claims they processed each year.
So this wasn't incompetence, it was a profit engine built on denial.
And this allowed Rudy to frame the punitive damages not as a windfall for the Black family, but as a necessary surgical fine. A punishment required to stop Great Benefit's $40 million a year denial scheme.
He told the jury they had the power to prevent corporate murder going forward.
And Rudy, observing Judge Kipler's subtle jury selection, he suspected the judge wanted a jury composed predominantly of black faces.
Individuals who were likely to be sympathetic to the plight of low-income, historically disadvantaged claimants fighting a faceless corporation.
In his closing argument, Rudy played directly to their sense of outrage and power. He told them flatly that if they didn't have the stomach to punish the company severely for its calculated cruelty, they should just keep the meager $200,000 settlement offer that the defense had put on the table.
He gave them an ultimatum: punish them or accept the pittance.
The strategy worked. The jury returned a verdict of $50 million.
The entire courtroom went silent. This was not the land of the five-figure verdicts anymore. This was history.
And the impact was immediate and widespread. The verdict was front-page news across the country. 7 different states immediately launched investigations into great benefits denial practices, recognizing the systemic fraud that Rudy had uncovered.
The financial pressure was immense. The parent company, PinCon, began laying off employees due to defaults and the enormous liability created by the judgment. Rudy Baylor, the lawyer who was supposed to be insignificant, had just delivered a shockwave to the entire insurance industry. #V, personal stakes and final reckoning.
So the high of the $50 million victory is immediately, and I mean immediately, contrasted by the complete chaos and danger erupting in Rudy's personal life.
The legal success cannot insulate him from the choices he made just to survive and win.
Let's look at his precarious living situation, which was both absurd and, in its own way, dangerous.
Right. Rudy had this very strange side deal with Miss Birdie Birdsong, the sweet but lonely senior from the law clinic.
He rented her apartment above the garage for a ridiculous $150 a month, including utilities and furniture.
But the real rent was labor. He agreed to do yard work, which included the specific back-breaking task of moving 25,600 pounds of mulch.
He was paying rent in mulch while simultaneously dealing with a client he suspected was the richest person I've ever met. Miss Birdie was often agitated about her will, frequently threatening to cut out her family and asking Rudy who she should give her money to.
And the sources highlight Rudy's ethical restraint here. Despite his desperate financial state, he resisted putting his name into her will. He was acutely aware of the potential ethical disaster of a lawyer inserting himself into a wealthy, elderly client's estate planning.
It shows the last vestiges of that ethical lawyer battling the destitute fugitive he's becoming.
It does. And this arrangement, it ended badly because of Miss Birdie's family. Her son, Delbert, and daughter-in-law, June, they descended upon her house to take control of her affairs.
And they demanded to know why Rudy was paying such low rent.
Right. Miss Birdie, sensing her freedom and control slipping away, she fled. She went to Florida to live with family, but she suggested the circumstances were traumatic, implying they were waiting for her to die and even fearing poison in the food.
So Rudy lost his secure, cheap housing just as his life became infinitely more complicated.
Exactly. The ultimate personal crisis, however, came with the Kelly Riker homicide.
A situation rooted in Rudy's commitment to protecting a client from horrific domestic abuse.
Horrific is the word. Kelly Riker was just 19, married to Cliff Riker, a washed-up jock who drove a forklift, drank heavily, and beat her with an aluminum softball bat.
She had attempted divorce before, but dismissed the petition out of sheer terror.
So Rudy, understanding the severity of the threat, took the immense step of filing new divorce papers and moving Kelly to a secret shelter for abused women, incurring a hefty $100 per day cost for her protection.
The explosive confrontation occurred when Rudy returned to her apartment alone to retrieve some necessary clothes. Cliff was waiting in ambush with his aluminum softball bat,
yelling, "You son of a bitch!" a clear intent to kill Rudy.
So Rudy dodged a swing that was aimed directly at his head. In the ensuing struggle, Rudy wrestled the bat away from him and struck Cliff twice.
Once across the ear and the second time across the top of his head. The result was a fatal skull fracture.
Rudy's immediate reaction was pure panic. He fled the scene, leaving Kelly to call 911.
And Kelly immediately claimed self-defense, a claim that was entirely plausible given Cliff's history of violence. But Rudy's involvement meant he was now a direct participant in a homicide.
This is where Rudy, the newly successful lawyer, fully leverages the cynical network he had built. He called Booker and, through him, worked contacts like Judge Shankle's brother, but to expedite Kelly's release from jail on a $10,000 bond.
But the ultimate decision was an absolute ethical compromise and a matter of self-preservation.
He chose to remain completely silent about his presence, allowing Kelly's self-defense claim to stand unadulterated. He became an accessory to a cover-up, regardless of the morality of the initial fatal strike. His newfound fame could not withstand the scrutiny of a police investigation into a violent death.
No way. The final, unavoidable reckoning arrived swiftly, and it was driven by the criminal world that had initially protected him. Rudy's association with Bruiser Stone was now an active liability.
Bruiser Stone and Prince Thomas, the owner of Yogi's, were indicted on racketeering charges and had already fled the area.
The feds moved in, closing down their operations, including Yogi's and Club Amber, and seizing all their assets. Rudy's source of protection and his first legitimate income stream were now tied to a major federal criminal investigation.
And Deck Shiflett delivered the final, terrifying warning.
He did. Bruiser had reached out, explicitly warning Deck that the FBI was now watching every move, specifically because Rudy was the only lawyer who had worked for both Bruiser Stone and Prince Thomas.
He's the common link.
He was the common link. Rudy was now a prime, uninsulated target for federal prosecutors looking to flip anyone tied to the operation.
A choice was simple. Stay and face potential indictment and disbarment over the homicide cover-up and the racketeering investigation, or run.
Rudy chose flight.
He dissolved his partnership with Deck, selling his small inventory files for a paltry $2,000 and giving Deck his entire half of the firm's $3,400 bank balance.
The story ends not with an acceptance speech, but with a rapid, terrified departure. Rudy Baylor, the lawyer who had just secured the biggest verdict in state history and was suddenly famous, left Memphis in his Volvo, driving across the country, heading for Spartanburg, South Carolina. He became a fugitive lawyer, running from the very legal system he had just successfully used to champion the weak. #Check outro.
So what we've tracked is this stunning, almost unbelievable journey of Rudy Baylor. He started as a desperate, bankrupt law graduate ruined by corporate callousness.
Right.
And he ascended to become the lawyer who secured a landmark $50 million punitive verdict against a massive, corrupt insurance company guilty of effectively causing Donnie Ray Black's death.
And this deep dive really revealed the brutal, often ugly truth about high-stakes law. The lofty ideals Rudy held in law school were just. They were replaced by the grime of actual practice. We saw systemic corruption on the defense side, the firing of witnesses, the concealment of the stupid letter.
And the illegal wiretapping.
The illegal wiretapping.
And we also saw the necessary ethical compromises Rudy had to make to even have a chance to win. Partnering with organized crime elements, utilizing ambulance-chasing tactics, and ultimately covering up a homicide to protect a vulnerable client and himself from total destruction.
Rudy won the ultimate fight for the Black family. He achieved a form of justice and forced a major corporation to acknowledge its systemic fraud that was clearing $40 million a year through denial.
But his success came at the immediate cost of his own professional future and his physical safety, forcing him to liquidate his entire practice for a pittance and flee the city that should have been celebrating him.
The unavoidable truth is that the victory is instantly undercut by chaos. That $50 million verdict, it faces a vicious, endless appeal process by the highest-powered legal team in the country.
And Rudy is now a fugitive, a person who chose to protect a client and cover up his own involvement in a death, making him vulnerable to federal scrutiny.
So we have to ask ourselves this provocative final thought. When you're fighting overwhelming institutional corporate power like Great Benefit, is the pursuit of genuine systemic justice ever truly clean?
Or does winning that one necessary big one, the one that actually forces change, does it always require compromising everything, including your freedom and your soul, just to secure that victory?